Open up, this is our son's home. My MOM showed up at dawn with my dad and brother, ready to force their way into the apartment. The same one I threw them out of yesterday after they shamed me in front of everyone. When they raised a crowbar, I swung the door open, and what I was holding made them scream in terror. Could you even imagine waking up to your own family trying to break down your front door with a crowbar? It sounds like a scene from a nightmare, right? But for me, Jelena, that was my terrifying reality, just hours after I'd finally stood up to them, after years of suffocating control. They thought they were coming to reclaim what they believed was theirs, but what they saw in my hands when I suddenly flung that door open, that made them scream in pure, unadulterated horror. I was 32 years old, and after 3 decades, I finally thought I was free. Free from the constant judgment, the endless manipulation, the suffocating grip of my family. But that morning, as my mother shrieked, "Break down the door! This is our son's apartment," referring to my brother, mind you, I knew this battle was far from over. They had no idea I was standing right inside, listening to every single word, still reeling from the public humiliation they'd inflicted on me just yesterday. What I did next, and what they saw when I faced them, would change everything. To truly understand why they were trying to smash their way into my home, you need to understand the people who raised me. I grew up in what looked like the perfect suburban dream. You know, one of those houses outside Chicago with landscaping so immaculate, it practically glowed, and holiday decorations that made the neighbors green with envy. But behind that picture-perfect facade, behind our polished front door, lived a family obsessed with control. And leading the charge? My father, George Williams. He built his insurance empire from nothing, and honestly, his drive was immense. You might even call it admirable, if it didn't come wrapped up in this unbending belief that he, and only he, knew what was best for absolutely everyone in his orbit. Questioning him? That was a direct challenge to his king-like authority. He planned our lives with the same ruthless precision he used for his business, leaving zero room for our own dreams, our own desires. My mother, Evelyn, was a master and absolute artist of passive aggression. She'd never directly defy my father, no. Instead, she'd wield guilt and emotional manipulation with surgical precision, cutting right to your core. "I just want what's best for you," she'd coo, right after she'd completely undermined my confidence. And her all-time favorite line, whenever I dared to object to anything: "One day you'll thank us for this." Well, let me tell you, I'm still waiting for that day to come. Then there was Nathan, my older brother, the golden child who could do no wrong. He was Dad's mirror image. From his business degree to that infuriating, condescending attitude, he aimed straight at me. Dad controlled with orders, but Nathan? He used mockery and dismissal. "Don't be so dramatic, Jelena," he'd sneer. That became his go-to catchphrase whenever I dared to express a single feeling. You see, status was everything to my parents. Our family's reputation in the community was meticulously cultivated, just like those prize roses in our front yard. My mother was on every church committee. Dad donated generously to local charities. And all of us? We had to look and act utterly perfect in public. The pressure, the sheer weight of it, was suffocating. My education? It wasn't about me learning, not really. It was about their achievement, about how well I reflected on them. In high school, when I dared to show some artistic talent, a spark of passion, my parents immediately dismissed it. "That's a hobby," they'd say. "Art won't pay the bills," my father declared, shutting down my dreams before they could even breathe. He steered me directly towards business school, and like a good, obedient daughter, I dutifully enrolled in the marketing program at the university they selected. My art school dreams? Crushed. Buried. Even my appearance wasn't my own. My mother scheduled my haircuts, picked out my clothes, and Lord help me, she always had something to say about my weight. "No one will take you seriously looking like that," she'd say, her voice dripping with disapproval, if I dared to choose an outfit she didn't like. By the time I was 20, I swear, I had completely lost any sense of my own style, my own preferences. I didn't even know who I was anymore. Dating? Oh, that was a whole other battlefield. Any poor boy I dared to bring home faced an intense interrogation from my father. His family background? Career prospects? Nathan would chime in later, gleefully telling me which ones weren't good enough for our family. My first serious college boyfriend, Daniel, was doomed from the start. His parents were teachers, not professionals. Unsuitable, apparently. The relationship crumbled after months of my parents' relentless, subtle sabotage. And the control didn't stop there. It seeped into my finances, too. Yes, they paid for my education, but they made sure to remind me of it, constantly. We invest in your future because we love you, they'd say, but I knew deep down this investment came with invisible, suffocating strings attached. They insisted on having access to my bank accounts well into my 20s. Every single purchase was scrutinized, judged, and often criticized. My first real attempt at independence? That came right after college graduation. I did the unthinkable. I found a marketing job at a small, independent firm, instead of dutifully joining my father's company, as everyone expected. The fallout? Instant. Nuclear. After all we've done for you, my mother wailed over the phone, her voice laced with betrayal. My father was, as always, far more direct. You're making a mistake, Jelena. A mistake that will cost you your future. For weeks, family dinners weren't about bonding. They were tribunals. My career choice was dissected, analyzed, and utterly shredded. Nathan, of course, chimed in, detailing how I was throwing away the connections, the security, the legacy our family offered. Their united front, that impenetrable wall of concern, slowly, relentlessly wore me down. 6 months later, I resigned. I took a position at my father's company. The pattern, this soul-crushing cycle, continued for years. Every single tiny attempt to break free, to establish my own independence, was met with instant, fierce resistance. "You wanted a solo vacation?" My mother would miraculously develop sudden, debilitating health concerns that absolutely required my presence. I dared to mention moving into my own place. My father would whip out spreadsheets, meticulously proving why it was financially smarter to stay under his roof. By 30, I was still stuck in my childhood bedroom, still working for my father, and honestly, feeling more like a trapped teenager than a grown woman. I had savings, but I was terrified to use them. I had dreams, but I was too scared to even think about pursuing them. From the outside, my life looked so successful, so polished. Inside, it was a hollow, echoing void. My college friends were getting married, having kids, building careers they chose. I had financial security, yes, but zero freedom. The real turning point, the moment everything shifted, happened in a therapy session I'd started attending in secret. Dr. Tuda Morris, with a gentle wisdom, asked me a simple question that hit me like a ton of bricks. "Whose life are you living, Jelena?" I had no answer, because in that instant, I realized the horrifying truth. I was living their vision for my life, not my own. That question haunted me, echoing in my mind for weeks, until I finally, definitively, made the decision. I was moving out. At 31 years old, I was finally getting my own place for the very first time, and I didn't care about the consequences anymore. I just had to do it. I found an apartment. I signed the lease. I did it all without telling my family, bracing myself for the inevitable storm. This apartment, though, finding it felt like falling in love. It wasn't some grand, perfect place by conventional standards. Just a one-bedroom walk-up in an older building, with creaky floors and appliances that had seen better decades. But oh, those huge windows. They absolutely flooded the living room with natural light, making it the perfect spot for my long-abandoned painting. The built-in bookshelves? Finally, a home for all the books my parents had deemed wastes of time. And that small balcony, overlooking a quiet courtyard? It promised a peaceful retreat. Most importantly, more than anything else, it was mine. I signed the lease on a Tuesday and broke the news the following Sunday, during our mandatory, stifling family dinner. The reaction? Exactly what I'd anticipated. My father slowly, deliberately put down his fork. "An apartment at those prices? That's financially irresponsible, Jelena," he stated, his voice a low rumble of disapproval. My mother's eyes instantly welled up. "But why would you want to leave home? Don't we take good care of you?" Nathan, of course, just scoffed. "Is this another one of your independence phases? Remember when you wanted to study abroad in college?" I had prepared myself for this, truly, but even then, I felt my resolve flicker. Then Dr. Morris's words echoed in my mind about the power of setting boundaries. I took a deep breath. "I've signed the lease. I move in next week. I'd love your support," I told them, my voice surprisingly steady. "But I'm doing this regardless." The initial shock on their faces slowly morphed into what I now call their helping phase. If they couldn't prevent my independence, they'd simply control it instead. My father immediately offered to help with the rent, a proposition I politely but firmly declined. My mother insisted on coming with me to buy furniture, subtly, relentlessly steering me toward pieces that looked like their home, not reflecting my taste. Nathan volunteered to handle the moving arrangements, trying to schedule it all around his convenience, not mine. Despite all their interference, I moved in. That first night alone in my new place, I was a strange mix of terrified and utterly exhilarated. I ordered takeout, food I knew my mother would absolutely disapprove of, sat on the floor because my furniture hadn't arrived yet, and just cried. Tears of pure, unadulterated relief. That night, I swear, I slept better than I had in years. That peaceful feeling? It lasted exactly 3 glorious days. Then, inevitably, my parents showed up, unannounced, of course, bearing housewarming gifts, which mostly consisted of their opinions. My mother immediately began her inspection, walking through my apartment, running her finger over surfaces, checking for dust, already rearranging the few decorations I'd carefully placed. My father? He measured the windows, then declared, without a hint of consultation, that he'd be ordering proper blinds to replace the ones already there. As they were leaving, my father announced, not asked, but announced, "You need to give us a key, Jelena. For emergencies." Reluctantly, feeling that familiar pull of obligation, I agreed. I rationalized it, told myself it would ease their anxiety about me living alone. What I couldn't expect was how they would define emergency. My mother started dropping by while I was at work, leaving home-cooked meals, and yes, cleaning. I'd come home to find my laundry folded in a way I didn't recognize, my bed made completely differently, and things moved to where she thought they belonged. My father used his key to let in various maintenance people he'd hired, completely without my knowledge or consent. Suddenly, I had new light fixtures I hadn't chosen, and absolutely didn't want. But the most invasive incident, the one that broke me, happened when I came home early from work with a throbbing migraine. I walked in to find my parents and Nathan in my living room, with an interior designer. They had measurement tools, fabric swatches. My private space was a war zone of their making. "Surprise!" my mother chirped, utterly oblivious to my shock, my violation. "We're giving your apartment a proper makeover. This designer did the Henderson's Lake house." The designer, bless her, looked incredibly uncomfortable. I just stared, struggling to maintain my composure. "I didn't ask for a makeover," I finally managed, my voice shaking. "This is my home, and I like it as it is." My father just waved away my objection, as if swatting a bothersome fly. "You don't know what good design is, honey. Let the professionals handle this." That evening, after they finally left, I just sat there in my living room, feeling utterly, completely violated. They had stormed into my sacred space without permission, making decisions about my home without my consent. The parallels to how they had always treated my life choices? They were glaring, impossible to ignore. It was my neighbor, Olivia, who finally helped me see things clearly. We met in the hallway when I was struggling with groceries, and she, a kind social worker about 10 years my senior, offered to help. Over a thank you cup of coffee, the words just tumbled out of me. I found myself telling her all about my family's surprise redecorating committee. Olivia listened, utterly without judgment, before she spoke. "Jelena," she said gently, "what you're describing sounds like they simply don't respect your boundaries. Having a key doesn't give them the right to just waltz in whenever they please." "But they're just trying to help," I heard myself say, automatically repeating the tired old excuse I'd used for years. She looked at me, her eyes kind but firm. "Is it helping if it makes you uncomfortable in your own home? Help should make your life better, not make you feel invaded." That conversation was another earthquake, another seismic shift in my perspective. The very next day, I changed the locks on my apartment door. I didn't tell my family right away. I knew the confrontation would be intense, brutal even. Instead, I used the time to emotionally prepare myself with Dr. Morris's guidance. "Setting boundaries isn't about punishing them," Dr. Morris explained during our session. "It's about protecting yourself and establishing healthy relationships." "But what if they never accept my boundaries?" I asked, voicing my deepest, most terrifying fear. Her answer was pragmatic. "Then you'll have information about what kind of relationship is truly possible with them. Not everyone can adapt to healthy boundaries, especially if they're so used to control." The inevitable confrontation came a few days later, exactly as I expected. My mother tried to let herself in while I was home, and found her key didn't work. I heard the confused jiggling of the door handle, then insistent knocking. When I finally opened the door, her expression shifted from confusion to wounded hurt. "My key doesn't work, Jelena. Is something wrong with your lock?" I took a deep, fortifying breath. "I changed the locks, Mom. I should have told you," but I needed to make a point. You and Dad have been coming in without my permission, and that needs to stop. The hurt in her eyes vanished, instantly replaced by blazing indignation. Without permission? We're your parents. We don't need permission to look after our daughter. I'm 32 years old, Mom, I said, my voice rising. I don't need looking after. And yes, you absolutely do need permission to enter my home. That conversation ignited a cold war that lasted for weeks. My parents' calls did become less frequent, a small mercy. But Nathan happily took up the mantle, constantly calling to tell me I was overreacting. They're just trying to make your place livable, Jelena, he'd say, his tone dripping with condescension. You've always been so sensitive. But despite the tension, despite the constant pressure, I held my ground. Every single day in my apartment felt like a small, quiet victory for my burgeoning independence. I painted the living room a soft, calming blue, a color I knew deep down my mother would utterly despise. I filled my space with eclectic treasures from thrift stores, ignoring the high-end retailers my parents would have preferred. I hung my own artwork on the walls, pieces I'd created in secret over years, finally out in the light. My confidence bloomed, growing stronger with every decision I made, alongside my rediscovered sense of personal style. I started reconnecting with college friends, people I'd lost touch with during those years of family-enforced isolation. I even joined a local art class, picking up my brushes and painting regularly again, letting that suppressed creative spirit finally soar. And yes, I even started dating, completely bypassing my family's intricate approval system. 6 months into my independent life, I felt like a genuinely different person. My apartment wasn't just a place to live. It was a true, vibrant reflection of who I was, not who my family desperately wanted me to be. The only shadow lingering over this precious new life was the simmering, undeniable tension with my family. It was a pressure cooker, steadily building towards an explosion that no one, not even me, could have possibly predicted. Aunt Patricia's 60th birthday. A milestone, etched months in advance on our family calendar. As my mother's only sister, she held a special, almost sacred, place in our family hierarchy, demanding a full gathering of the entire extended clan. Under normal circumstances, I would have dreaded it. Hours of performative family harmony, a suffocating charade. But after 6 months of fiercely guarding my independence, I felt stronger. More capable. I truly believed I could navigate the family dynamics without losing myself. I chose my outfit that morning with intention. A chic navy blue dress, professional yet utterly me. I wore jewelry I'd bought for myself, not the pearls my mother insisted were the only appropriate accessory. Driving to Aunt Patricia's suburban home, I was nervous, yes, but absolutely determined to hold my boundaries. The first hour? Surprisingly great. I reconnected with cousins I actually liked, people I rarely saw outside these mandated events. Sophia, my cousin, even commented, "Jelena, you look so happy." Uncle David asked about my apartment, not with judgment, but what seemed like genuine interest. Even Aunt Patricia noticed, pulling me aside. "There's something different about you, Jelena," she whispered. "You seem lighter." I began to relax, a fragile hope blossoming. Maybe, just maybe, they could accept the new, independent me. That hope shattered into a million pieces when my father, with the practiced confidence of a man who always controls the room, clinked his glass to silence everyone. "While we're all together," he boomed, a smug grin plastered across his face, "I wanted to share some exciting news about Jelena's apartment." My body went cold. All eyes swung to me. I had no idea what he was about to say, and that terrifying unknown alone was alarming. "Evelyn and I have decided to give Jelena's apartment a complete renovation. As a surprise." He beamed, like he'd just announced a cure for cancer. "We've hired Wilson Designs, the same firm that did the Johnson's Lake house." My mother jumped in, gushing enthusiastically. "We've already ordered new furniture. And the painters start Monday. Wait until you see the plans." She pulled out her phone, excitedly showing photos to relatives gathered nearby. And that's when a growing horror seized me. She was showing pictures of my apartment, photos taken without my knowledge, during their unauthorized visits. My private sanctuary, my sacred space, was being displayed for the entire family to evaluate, to dissect, to critique. "The current furniture is so eclectic," my mother continued, her voice dripping with diplomatic distaste. Everyone knew that was her code for cheap and tasteless. Nathan, ever so helpful, chimed in. "Jelena's always had unique taste. Remember her purple hair phase in high school?" The table erupted in laughter. And just like that, I was 16 again, my choices mocked as immature phases rather than expressions of my identity. I haven't agreed to any renovation, I said, my voice barely a whisper, shaking despite my efforts. This is the first I'm hearing about it. My father waved away my comment, a dismissive flick of his hand. It's a surprise, honey. That's why we didn't tell you. A surprise implies something the person would want, I retorted, feeling my carefully constructed composure crack, shattering around me. I don't want strangers in my apartment making changes I haven't approved. The table fell silent. The tension was so thick, you could taste it. My mother's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened, turning to chips of ice. Jelena, this isn't the time or place to discuss this. You brought it up in front of everyone. I shot back, my voice gaining strength. When would be a better time to discuss changes to my home than when you announced them publicly? My father's face hardened, shifting into that stern, familiar look, the one that had silenced me countless times throughout my childhood. We're trying to help you create a proper living space. The apartment looks like a college dorm room. It looks like me. I practically yelled, my voice ringing with a newfound power. It reflects who I am, not who you want me to be. Aunt Patricia, bless her, tried to diffuse the escalating situation. The cake is ready. Shall we move to the living room? But something had broken open inside me. Years of suppressed feelings, years of quiet desperation, finally found their voice. I changed the locks for a reason. I don't want you coming into my space without permission. And I certainly don't want you renovating it without my consent. The stunned silence around the table was deafening. It underscored just how rarely anyone dared to contradict my father in public. My cousins suddenly found their plates incredibly fascinating. Uncle David cleared his throat, a nervous, uncomfortable sound. My mother's voice was tight, thin with barely controlled anger. Jelena, you're making a scene at your aunt's birthday. I'm not the one who brought up renovating someone else's home without their permission. I shot back. Nathan, ever the provocateur, jumped in, his tone dripping with condescension. Typical Jelena drama. They're trying to help you, and you're acting like they committed a crime. Entering someone's home without permission is a crime, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. It's called breaking and entering. My father stood up then, his face flushed crimson with rage. That's enough. We have never broken into your apartment. We had a key. A key, I replied, standing now, 2 years of therapy finally giving me the spine to stand my ground. A key I never should have given you, because you abused the privilege. My apartment is my space, not an extension of your house, not a project for you to fix. Aunt Patricia finally intervened, her voice gentle but firm. George, Evelyn, perhaps this is a discussion for another time. My father nodded stiffly, his jaw clenched, barely containing his fury. Of course, Patricia. I apologize for the disruption. The conversation mercifully shifted to safer, bland topics, but the damage was done. I felt the weight of disapproving glances from relatives who, without a doubt, believed I had utterly disrespected my parents. Others, though, gave me subtle nods of support or looks of genuine sympathy. The family had just witnessed something rarely seen in our carefully controlled public image: authentic conflict. I stayed through the cake cutting, just to avoid causing further disruption to Aunt Patricia's celebration. But the joy had completely drained out of the day. As I prepared to leave, my mother cornered me in the hallway. We'll discuss this at your apartment later, she said, her tone a clear command, not a suggestion. No, I replied simply, firmly. If you want to talk, call first. Ask if you can visit. I won't open the door otherwise. Her eyes widened in disbelief at my direct refusal. This behavior needs to stop, Jelena. Your father and I have had enough. So have I said, surprising even myself with my newfound calm. That's why I'm setting boundaries. I left the gathering knowing, deep in my gut, that the confrontation wasn't over. Merely postponed. The drive home gave me time to prepare for what I knew would come next. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have fully prepared me for my family's actual reaction to my newfound independence. I barely had time to kick off my heels and change into comfy clothes before my apartment buzzer blared. Through the peephole, I saw them. My parents and Nathan packed into the hallway, their faces a terrifying mix of fury and stubborn determination. I took a deep, shaky breath and opened the door. But I stood squarely in the frame, a human barrier, making it crystal clear they were not invited in. May I help you? I asked, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. Don't be ridiculous, Jelena. Let us in. We need to talk, my father demanded, already trying to push past me. I held my ground. I told Mom I wanted advance notice before visits. This isn't a good time. My mother's face crumpled into that familiar, wounded expression, the one that had manipulated me for years. After what you did at Patricia's party, you're going to turn us away at the door. Do you have any idea how embarrassed we were? You embarrassed yourselves, I retorted, feeling a surge of calm, almost disbelief, at my own composure, by announcing renovation plans for my apartment without my consent. Nathan stepped forward, using his height to try and physically intimidate me. The contractors are downstairs waiting. Dad paid a premium for them to start today. Are you really going to waste thousands of dollars because of your sudden need for independence? I looked past them, and my heart sank. Two men in paint-splattered clothes stood awkwardly by the building's entrance, confirming Nathan's words. The sheer audacity. They had actually brought contractors, without my agreement, standing right there. It solidified my resolve. Yes, Nathan, I am. I never asked for renovations. I never agreed to renovations. Those men have no right to enter my home. My father's face was turning a dangerous shade of red, a sign I knew all too well from childhood. This isn't about rights, Jelena. This is about what's best for you. Your apartment looks like a thrift store exploded in it. What will people think? I don't care what people think. I shot back, my voice unwavering. I care what I think. And I love my apartment exactly as it is. This rebellion has gone on long enough, my father roared, his voice rising, so loud that a neighbor's door down the hall creaked open slightly. If you're going to live independently, you need to do it properly. That means a professionally designed living space. No, that. I yelled back, matching his volume. Living independently means making my own choices about my space, my time, and my life. It means not having to justify my decisions to you, or anyone else. My mother's strategy shifted abruptly. The hurt vanished, replaced by a flood of tears. Another familiar tactic. We just want to help you, Jelena. That's all we've ever wanted. Why are you pushing us away? It's breaking my heart. In the past, those crocodile tears would have instantly shattered my resolve. Today, they solidified it. Mom, I appreciate that you think you want to help, but real help would be respecting my wishes. You don't know what you want. Nathan interjected, his voice sharp. You never have. Remember when you wanted to be a painter? How would that have paid your bills? I still paint, Nathan, I said, a slow, defiant smile forming. My apartment is full of my artwork that you've apparently never noticed during your visits. And I pay my bills just fine with my marketing job. My father checked his watch impatiently. Enough of this nonsense. The contractors are on the clock. Let us in so they can start work. No, I said firmly. Please tell them to leave. I won't be responsible for their time, since I never hired them. Just then, the door across the hall opened, and Olivia, my wonderful neighbor, stepped out. Ostensibly to check her mail, but clearly, she was responding to the escalating voices. Everything okay, Jelena? She asked, giving my family a pointed, disapproving look. My father, ever conscious of appearances, instantly lowered his voice. This is a family matter, Olivia. It's fine. My family was just leaving, I said, grateful for her unexpected presence, her silent support. We're not leaving until this has resolved, my mother insisted, her tears now more angry than sad. Jelena, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I am an adult with my own living space that I pay for. I decide what happens in it. My father's patience finally snapped. If you want to be so independent, perhaps you should be fully independent. No more family support. No safety net. If that's your choice, I accept it, I replied, the words painful to utter, but so necessary. You can't be serious. My mother gasped, truly horrified. George, she doesn't mean that. I do mean it. I would rather live without your financial support than with your constant control. Nathan stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. You're making a huge mistake, Jelena. You've always been dramatic, but this is taking it too far. The only mistake I made was not setting boundaries sooner, I replied, standing my ground, unyielding despite his intimidating stance. My father, with a theatrical flourish, pulled out his wallet. He removed a credit card with my name on it, one they had given me for emergencies, but which I had deliberately not used since moving out. He held it up, a symbol of their power, before tucking it back in his wallet. When you come to your senses, let us know. Until then, you're on your own. I already am, I said quietly. My mother made one last, desperate attempt, her voice breaking. Please, Jelena, let us help you. Let us in. Looking into her pleading eyes, I felt a momentary waver in my resolve, that lifetime habit of giving in, of keeping the peace, fighting against my newfound strength. But then I remembered. The photos. The public humiliation. The invasion of my privacy. The complete, utter disregard for my wishes. I love you, Mom, I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my chest. But no. Please respect my decision. This isn't over, my father said, his voice ominous as he finally turned to leave. We'll be back tomorrow, and I expect a more reasonable attitude. Don't come without calling first, I reminded them, my voice surprisingly calm. And I expect you to respect my decision, even if you don't agree with it. Nathan was the last to leave, lingering in the doorway. You know they'll never give up, right? He sneered. This little independence game will end eventually. It always does. This isn't a game, Nathan, I said, looking him dead in the eye. This is my life. After they finally left, I closed the door and leaned against it, my legs suddenly weak, trembling. The confrontation had drained every ounce of energy from me, but underneath the exhaustion, there was a quiet, fierce sense of pride. I heard most of that. Are you okay? Olivia's voice cut through the silence. I invited her in for tea, so incredibly grateful for a friendly presence after the storm. They've never taken no for an answer before, I admitted. I don't think they'll start now. Then you need to be prepared, she said pragmatically. First, let's change your locks again. I know a locksmith who can come today. By evening, I had new locks installed, but that knot of anxiety in my stomach wouldn't ease. My father's parting words echoed in my mind, a chilling whisper. This isn't over. Knowing my family, I suspected they wouldn't accept my boundary. I knew they would escalate. I just didn't realize how far they would actually go. The pounding. On my door. It jolted me awake at 6:01 a.m. My heart seized in my chest. Disoriented, I fumbled for my phone, wondering who could possibly be at my door so early. The answer came through the thick wood, my mother's shrill voice piercing the silence. Jelena, open this door immediately. Fully awake now, every nerve ending firing, I pulled on my robe and crept towards the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the peephole, I saw them. My parents and Nathan, packed into the hallway, their faces grim, set in determined, angry expressions. Jelena, we know you're in there. Open up. My father's commanding voice, that deep rumble I'd automatically obeyed my entire life, washed over me. But this time, something was different. I resisted the urge to comply. What are you doing here so early? I called through the door, trying to project a strength I didn't quite feel. I told you to call before coming over. This has gone far enough, my father retorted, his voice tight with impatience. Your mother is worried sick about you. Open the door so we can talk properly. I'm fine, I shot back, my voice trembling with indignation. And I'm not opening the door. Please leave and call me later if you want to talk. There was a muffled, murmured conversation I couldn't quite make out. Then my mother's voice again, this time with a quaver that sounded chillingly rehearsed. Jelena, honey, we're concerned about your mental health. This behavior isn't like you. The implication hit me like a physical blow. They were framing my hard-won independence as a mental health crisis. I'd heard of families using this horrifying tactic to regain control over adult children. But to think mine would go this far? A cold dread washed over me. My mental health is fine. I yelled back, my voice shaking with indignation. In fact, it's better than it's been in years. My therapist can confirm that. Therapist? My mother's genuine shock, her absolute disbelief, was palpable through the door. You've been seeing a therapist without telling us? Before I could respond, I heard my father's impatient voice again, sharper now. This is ridiculous. Nathan, go down to the car and get the tool bag. The tool bag. The words hung in the air, the implication hitting me hard. They were planning to force their way in. My hands shaking, I fumbled for my phone and silently called 911. I need police assistance, I whispered, trying to keep my voice low enough so they wouldn't hear me. My family is threatening to break into my apartment. I gave my address, my voice barely audible. The dispatcher, calm and reassuring, told me officers would be there shortly and advised me to stay on the line. I muted my end of the call, every nerve straining to hear what was happening in the hallway. I can't believe it's come to this. I heard my mother lament, her voice softer now. What will the neighbors think? They'll think we're concerned parents checking on our daughter, my father replied dismissively. No one would blame us for that. Even Nathan sounded hesitant. Are you sure about this, Dad? She's left us no choice, my father declared, his voice rising again. Break down the door. This is our son's apartment. The bizarre statement momentarily confused me until it clicked. He was creating a twisted narrative, claiming this was somehow Nathan's place, that I was just occupying it. The sheer level of delusion, of entitlement, shocked me to my core. Then I heard Nathan return, followed by the metallic clink and scrape of what could only be tools. A crowbar. The dispatcher on the phone asked if I was still there, and I unmuted. They have tools, I whispered, the reality crashing down on me. I think they're actually going to try to break in. Officers are 3 minutes out, the dispatcher assured me. Stay on the line. A scraping sound. Against my doorframe. They were actually doing it. Actually attempting to force entry into my home. A lifetime of ingrained compliance, of deep-seated fear, battled fiercely with the newfound strength I'd been painstakingly building. In that moment, a crucial, life-altering decision crystallized. I had been recording the entire exchange on my phone, collecting evidence. But I had something else, something they absolutely didn't expect. Yesterday, after their visit, I'd called a lawyer friend who, thanks to her connections, had helped me file for an emergency temporary restraining order based on their harassment and threats. The official documents had been delivered late last night. The sound of metal against my doorframe grew more insistent, more forceful. I could hear my mother's anxious encouragements, my father's precise directions to Nathan on where to apply pressure with the crowbar. Making a split-second decision, my heart thundering, I positioned myself carefully to the side of the door. Restraining order in one hand, phone recording still active in the other. In one swift, powerful motion, I unlocked the door and pulled it open, instantly stepping further to the side, just in case they tried to rush me. The sudden opening caught them completely off guard. Nathan stumbled forward, a crowbar indeed clutched in his hands. My father's face registered shock, then instant, blazing anger. But it was my mother's reaction that would forever be seared into my memory. As her eyes fell first on the official documents in my hand, then on the phone, clearly recording their every move, her face transformed. The righteous concern melted away, replaced by pure, unadulterated horror. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, backing away as if I were the threat, not the other way around. "Defending my home from intruders," I replied, my voice remarkably calm, strong. I held up the restraining order. "This is a temporary restraining order prohibiting all of you from coming within 100 feet of me or my residence. You are currently in violation of that order, and you're being recorded attempting to break into my apartment with a crowbar." My father lunged forward, reaching for my phone. "Give me that. You're not recording anything." I quickly stepped back inside my doorway, out of his reach. "Everything has already been uploaded to cloud storage, Dad. Breaking my phone won't delete the evidence." Nathan stood frozen, crowbar still in hand, his expression a bewildering mix of confusion and the dawning, terrifying realization of the serious legal trouble they were in. "This is insane," my father sputtered, his voice cracking. "We're your parents. We have every right to check on you." "No, you don't," I stated firmly. "Not by breaking down my door. Not after I've explicitly told you to leave." Just then, the elevator dinged at the end of the hall, and Officer Garcia stepped out. Her hand rested cautiously near her weapon as she quickly assessed the chaotic scene. The sight of Nathan holding a crowbar immediately put her on high alert. "Put that down slowly," she instructed Nathan, her voice clear and authoritative. He complied immediately, placing the crowbar on the floor with a clatter. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding," my father began, effortlessly slipping into the charming persona he always used with authorities. "We're just concerned parents checking on our daughter." Officer Garcia looked to me for confirmation. I shook my head and held out the restraining order for her to inspect. "I have a temporary restraining order against all three of them. They were attempting to break into my apartment after threatening to return yesterday when I refused to let them in." The officer reviewed the paperwork, then nodded slowly. "This appears to be a valid order. Do you have evidence of the attempted break-in?" I held up my phone. I recorded everything, including their statements about breaking down the door. What followed was absolutely surreal. The family who had controlled every single aspect of my life for 3 decades was now temporarily detained in the hallway of my own apartment building. Officer Garcia took statements from all of us, and a second officer arrived to assist. My neighbor, Olivia, emerged from her apartment, confirming she'd witnessed yesterday's confrontation and heard this morning's disturbance. My parents' version of events, naturally, painted me as unstable, claiming they were worried about my mental health after erratic behavior at a family gathering. Nathan, visibly uncomfortable, backed their story, though Officer Garcia's questions about the necessity of a crowbar for a wellness check clearly rattled him. "If you are concerned about her welfare," Officer Garcia asked, her tone reasonable but pointed, "why not call for a wellness check from the police?" "We didn't want to embarrass her," my mother replied, the breathtaking irony of her statement completely lost on her as she stood in a public hallway, having just screamed and attempted to break down my door. While Officer Garcia spoke with my parents, the second officer pulled me aside. "Do you feel safe in your apartment?" he asked, his voice kind. "Is there somewhere else you can stay tonight?" "I feel safe here," I assured him, my voice firm. "This is my home, and I'm not leaving because of their behavior." After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 45 minutes, Officer Garcia informed my parents and Nathan that they would need to come to the station to give formal statements regarding the attempted break-in. The restraining order would be strictly enforced, meaning they couldn't come near my apartment or workplace. "This is outrageous," my father protested, his face a mask of indignation. "We've done nothing wrong, sir. Attempting to force entry into someone's residence with a crowbar is breaking and entering, Mr. Williams, restraining order or not," Officer Garcia explained patiently. "You're fortunate your daughter is willing to let the restraining order violation be your only consequence today." As they were finally escorted towards the elevator, my mother turned back, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this to us, Jelena? Your own family?" That question, the one that had controlled me for years, finally, completely, had no power over me. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said, my voice steady. "I'm protecting myself." After they finally vanished, the elevator doors closing behind them, I sank onto my couch in stunned silence, the adrenaline slowly, painfully draining from my system. The morning sun streamed through my curtains, illuminating the apartment that had become so much more than just four walls. It was worth fighting for. Not because of its physical attributes, no, but because it represented something infinitely precious, my undeniable right to make my own choices. Officer Garcia returned briefly to gather additional details for her report. "Family situations can be the most difficult," she said sympathetically. "Do you have support people you can talk to?" I thought of Olivia next door, of Dr. Morris, of the friends I had reconnected with over these past months. "Yes," I said, a small smile forming. "Yes, I do. I'm not alone." As she left, she handed me her card. "Call if they come back or contact you against the order. We take violations seriously." After she left, I walked slowly through my apartment, touching the furniture I had chosen, gazing at the artwork I had created, feeling the space that was unequivocally mine. For the very first time, I understood. That morning's events weren't just about an apartment. They were about reclaiming my life as my own. The financial realities of my newfound independence were certainly significant. Without the safety net my family had always and controlling LY provided, I had to learn quickly. I built an emergency fund from scratch, became fiercely intentional about every expense. I picked up freelance marketing projects, not just to supplement my income, but to prove to myself I could do it. These challenges were undeniably stressful, but with every bill I paid from my own earnings, a surge of empowering confirmation washed over me. I was capable. 6 months after the break-in attempt, I started attending a support group for adults dealing with controlling family relationships, a suggestion from Dr. Morris. Sharing my story with others who truly understood was a form of healing individual therapy couldn't quite provide alone. In that room, no one questioned why I couldn't just get along with my family. No one dared to suggest I was overreacting. They recognized the manipulation tactics, the guilt induction, the threats disguised as concern. The hardest part, I told the group during one session, is grieving the relationship I wished I had, while setting boundaries with the relationship I actually have. Karen, a wise woman in her 50s who'd been estranged from her parents for decades, nodded in understanding. "That grief never completely goes away, Jelena," she said softly. "But it does change over time. It becomes less raw, more manageable." As the 1-year anniversary of my move to independence approached, I realized just how much had transformed, not just in my circumstances, but deep within me. The constant, low-level anxiety that had been my lifelong companion finally diminished. I made decisions without hearing my parents' critical voices echoing in my head. I decorated my apartment, chose my clothes, and pursued interests without once wondering if they would meet with approval. I was finally becoming the person I might have been all along, if only I'd been given the space to develop naturally. Not perfect, not always confident, but unapologetically, authentically myself. The journey continued to have its painful moments, its dark days, but I no longer questioned whether it was worth the cost. 18 months after that terrifying morning my family tried to break down my door, my apartment had truly become my sanctuary. This space, the very heart of the conflict, was now transformed, not by the expensive designers my parents had tried to force upon me, but by my own evolving sense of what made me feel at home. My vibrant paintings hung on walls I'd painted in colors I loved. Plants thrived on my windowsills. Books I cherished filled the shelves, with no one to tell me they were a waste of time. The legal battles finally quieted down. My parents eventually accepted that their attempts to regain control through the courts were futile and, frankly, incredibly expensive. The permanent restraining order remained in place, though I had eventually modified it to allow for very limited contact through approved channels, mainly email, which gave me the power to set clear boundaries around when and how I engaged with them. My relationship with my extended family found a new equilibrium. Some relatives, like Aunt Patricia, maintained polite but distant contact, carefully tiptoeing around the rift. Others, like Uncle David and Aunt Susan, had become stronger supports than ever before, offering a genuine family connection that nurtured, rather than constrained. Holidays were spent with chosen family now, not out of obligation, a shift that brought both a pang of sadness and a profound sense of relief. Nathan and I even established an uneasy truce. Our monthly coffee meetings were stiff at first, both of us unsure how to relate without our established patterns of golden child and scapegoat. But gradually we found new common ground, discussing neutral topics like movies or books. During our last meeting, he truly surprised me by admitting, "Sometimes, Jelena, I think you were right to leave. Dad's been even more controlling since you've been gone." The tiny seed of awareness in that statement gave me a flicker of hope that Nathan might someday examine his own relationship with our parents. I didn't push. I knew from experience that such realizations couldn't be forced. Professionally, I found unexpected growth through this fierce independence. Without my father's influence dictating my career choices, I discovered talents and interests I'd never been allowed to explore. The freelance marketing work, initially a financial necessity, evolved into specialized projects in arts promotion, a perfect blend of my creative and business skills, finally feeling authentic and fulfilling. My friendship with Olivia had deepened into something that felt more like chosen family than mere friendship. We had weekly dinner nights, held spare keys to each other's apartments, and provided the kind of mutual support I had always imagined healthy families shared. Through her, I built connections with others, forming a true community of chosen family. Dating, too, took on a new, liberated dimension. Without my parents' looming approval system, I was finally free to discover what I truly wanted in a partner. After several casual relationships, I'd been dating Dylan for 6 months, a kind, creative man who understood and respected boundaries in a way that showed me what healthy love could actually look like. Therapy with Dr. Morris continued, though less frequently now. Our sessions focused less on crisis management and more on deeper healing, addressing the childhood patterns that still occasionally influence my reactions to stress or conflict. Family estrangement comes with its own unique grief process, Dr. Morris explained during one session. You're grieving not just the relationship you had, but the one you wished you had. That's a complex loss. The grief she described came in waves. There were days when I missed the good moments with my family, those rare instances of connection and warmth that had kept me clinging to hope for so many years. Mother's Day and Father's Day were particularly difficult. Social media flooded with celebrations of healthy parent-child relationships that starkly highlighted the absence in my own life. But alongside the grief, there was profound growth. I was learning to parent myself in the ways my parents never had, providing the validation, the support, the unconditional acceptance I had always craved. I celebrated my own achievements, comforted myself through difficulties, and gradually, slowly, replaced the critical internal voices with kinder, more compassionate ones. The process of healing showed me, with absolute clarity, that their controlling behavior had never, ever been about love, no matter how they'd framed it. Real love celebrates independence and growth. Real love respects boundaries and differences. Real love seeks connection without ownership. My experience made me more acutely aware of similar dynamics in others' lives. When my younger cousin Jamie reached out, confiding that she felt suffocated by family expectations, I was able to offer understanding without imposing solutions. I shared resources that had helped me and assured her that her feelings were valid, whatever path she chose. One unexpected area of healing, one that surprised even me, came through my art. The paintings I created after the break-in attempt vividly reflected my emotional journey. Starting with dark, confined images, gradually opening up to more light and expansive space. A local gallery owner, who purchased some of my work for a group show, described it as a visual journey from confinement to freedom, not even knowing the deeply personal story behind that evolution. The most profound lesson I learned through this entire tumultuous journey was this: setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's absolutely necessary for authentic relationships. Boundaries define where one person ends and another begins, creating the space for genuine connection rather than control or obligation. Far from destroying relationships, healthy boundaries make true intimacy possible. I also learned that healing isn't linear. There were days when a simple email from my mother could still trigger old patterns of guilt and self-doubt. There were nights when I questioned whether complete estrangement would have been easier than the complex, limited contact I maintained. But each time I navigated these challenges, I grew stronger in my conviction that I had made the right choice for my well-being, for my very soul. The question of full reconciliation remains open, still lingering. Not the kind that would demand I surrender my independence and revert to old patterns, no. But a new kind of relationship, built entirely on mutual respect. Is such a transformation possible? I honestly don't know. Family systems resist change fiercely, and the longer patterns have been established, the harder they are to break. What I do know with absolute certainty is that I am no longer willing to sacrifice my authenticity for approval. The price of admission to my life is respect for my boundaries. Those who can offer that, whether they're blood family or chosen family, are welcome. Those who cannot must remain at a safe distance, not as a punishment, but as a crucial protection for the self I have worked so incredibly hard to reclaim. The morning my family tried to break down my door marked the brutal, undeniable end of one chapter and the courageous, terrifying beginning of another. What they saw in my hands that day wasn't just legal paperwork or a recording phone. It was my reclamation of a power they had never intended me to have. Their horror was the stark recognition that they could no longer control my narrative or my life. The journey since has been challenging, yes, filled with difficult choices, but also unexpected joys, profound lessons, and immense self-discovery. I am still, every single day, discovering who I truly am outside of my family's suffocating expectations. Still learning to trust my own voice after decades of having it silenced. But each new day brings me closer to the whole, authentic person I was meant to be all along. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with people you deeply loved, or perhaps even people you thought you loved? How did you navigate that incredibly challenging terrain? I'd truly love to hear your stories and insights in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with anyone else who might be on a similar journey toward independence and authentic living. Thank you for listening to my story, and always remember, your need for boundaries and respect is absolutely valid, even when others don't understand it.